Good afternoon, everyone. I know since morning you are hearing a lot about digital transformation, HR practices. So today, quickly during this panel, we will cover best practices from this esteemed panel and their organizations. We'll learn from them what are they doing in terms of exploring new ideas, upskilling their workforce, and also how do they ensure they retain and all the workforce is actually agile and remains relevant to today's changing requirements. Technology is changing every day, right? I mean, and adoption of technology is a topic we've been hearing since morning. But if I just go around the table with three of you all, if you could quickly tell us a little bit about your organization and what are you doing exactly in terms of inclusion of technology in learning and development and also HR practices.
Good evening, everyone. So I represent an organization called Arcos.ai. We are basically into the AI space based out of the Silicon Valley in the US. And as a growing organization, we have to keep ourselves agile. And what we find, especially in the Silicon Valley, is the shelf life of every technology is very, very short. Earlier it used to be 6 years, 7 years, but now it has come down to 2 years to 3 years, right? So that means everyone has to be agile, right? And especially when you are there in the Silicon Valley, the technology can change almost once in 6 months. That's the speed at which we are going. So what we have adapted is, as an organization, instead of having classroom sessions or going back to books and other things, we are kind of condensed all the training materials into bite-sized modules, so that, and it can be available on the mobiles on the go. And that's a drastic change that we have done in the organization, so that it's available 24/7 and it is at the employee's convenience.
I have a follow-up question on that. What is the adoption of that format of learning and what are the completion rates?
I think adoption has been close to about 90%, because it's basically the youngsters that we have in our company. So for them and for their own culture and the way they operate, I think that's the best way we can go about.
That's really nice, yeah. Savita?
Good evening, everyone. Privileged to be here amidst all of you, and I'm sure many of us have been doing the same thing in different avatars in our organizations, pretty much in line with what you just heard from Stanley. I represent an organization called Market Simplified. We are into the capital market space of the BFSI segment, and what we do, we call ourselves a digital boutique studio, basically developing and working on mobile products. We also released our in-house low-code augmentation products called Nitro very recently at the FinTech festivals. Some of the, it's very interesting actually. When this topic came to me, I went through and thought about what we had done and what we haven't done. Right now, I think some of the things that we have already begun in right earnest are about how do we bring in technology and how do we ensure everybody adapts to technology, because change is never easy. So we started, of course, the other part of HR transformation is all about your onboarding, your, getting them in through training programs, getting them through skill-ready programs, future-ready programs, and then, of course, your performance systems. So we've rephrased that as career management here in our organization, and we call it, drive your success and drive your destiny. So that's what we call it. So what, in essence, it translates to is we do not want to use the 5-point rating scale, because I think, the times have changed, and it is important to understand that if we facilitate, we don't need to coach people today, we need to facilitate that. So very important for us to use AI and technology. What we have done is to relook at the performance management system, one of the key things that we did. And we brought in-house the concept of assignment managers and career managers. Now, career manager is a person who would help an individual to raise himself, to raise the bar, and to relook at what opportunities lie within the organization and what he should develop, where the skill gap lies. And that's a manual part of it, right? That's just to ensure you still have a human touch. What we have done is we have banked on AI, because all of these are captured, the inputs that are captured are through our own in-house automation tool. We also have an external partner, the HRMS tool. And these inputs, the data which is fed into with a lot of data privacy rules in place, all of this data helps in the back end to develop those micro programs, micro learning programs for individuals basis where the skill gaps are. So we do not do classroom sessions. We do not call for common trainers. What we do is we give them licenses, and we ask them to do self-learning. So there's a lot of emphasis on self-learning. That's the second part of what we've done. The third part is we have built in a very robust mentorship program within the organization. What I mean by this is we all understand the concept of mentors and coaches, but here what we have done is we have defined panel of mentors, about 90 plus in the organization, and they are at different levels of mentorship, right? So we have different codes assigned to them because they also go through coaching with seniors, and these people help us to ensure that there is absolute involvement and engagement right from day one when the individual comes in. The coaching or the mentoring is actually a choice of the individual employee, and that makes it different and nice because there's a lot of engagement, and there are certain defined parameters. So there's a similarity established. The AI algorithm works in a lovely manner. It brings out and says, all right, if these are your primary skills, these are your secondary, and these are your tertiary, here are people who share similar likes and proficiencies. Likewise, if your competency is on, say, micro lending or mortgages, these are different domains within the broader aspect of fintech, then here you have people with expertise in, say, capital markets or lending or mortgages and so on. So, you can match. Now, HR does not need to get in, and there's no manual work in all there because the individual, an employee coming in, can just go into the tool, choose his mentor, connect with the mentor, and just keep us posted on how many sessions of mentoring they've had. That is it.
It's quite interesting, Sabita, and I have a lot of questions, but I'll come back to you after we go with Anand.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everybody. I'm Arvind here, and I represent Mindsprint. Mindsprint is part of the Olam group, so we are the IT arm of the Olam group, and we are in a journey at this point in time. We're moving from a captive into an IT services organization. So what do we do in technology, right? To start with, I'll tell you, my CEO has given me a goal with a 25% weightage, and it says HR technology. So this has not probably been there in the past for me, and obviously 25% of my incentives now lie on that goal. So what are we doing about it? So we have now been started thinking a little different in the last about 1 year. I have now formed a vertical in HR called HR technology. So every time my team member comes and asks me for an additional headcount, I would rather fit that headcount into the HR technology vertical than feed that headcount into the other functions, right? What is it now churning out? It's churning out wonderful results. I'll probably give you examples. I mean, a lot of probably what my colleagues spoke about, some of these things that we do, something different that we are doing at this point in time. This team is working with the digital team, and we have it almost ready for launch, where my entire analytics, right, is linked to AI and LLM. Now, what's so different? All of us are doing it. What's so different about this analytics? I just have to key in English, saying what is my iteration at this point in time, right? Quickly, I get the analytics around it, and it's all in-house created as we are speaking, right? So obviously, I mean, we're trying out a lot of new things on how can we make life a lot more seamless for our leaders, for our employees using technology. Obviously, a lot of AI bots on talent acquisition. We are into performance management using AI, where probably the AI helps, at this point in time, probably a little basic, where the AI helps in writing their appraisal, in terms of course correcting them, in terms of language, in terms of detail, how probably employees can take more help in keeping their appraisals, their documentation a lot more sharper. Just few examples, but yes, a very interesting genre at this point in time, Niti. And I think in time to come, each month, every 6 months, things are changing.
Yeah.
Right, so I'm also very curious to see how the next 1 year looks like.
So Arvind, I'll just stay with you for a little bit longer. You mentioned LLMs and you mentioned your data analytics, right? What kind of analysis do you do on a recurring basis using these, large language models? And I'm assuming you have your own AI, GPTs and all that in-house, right? What is the kind of data analysis? Where do you use it exactly in terms of ensuring that your employees are relevant to today's requirement? Technology is changing. Each one of us are acknowledging that. How do you use the data? Where do you use it? And then what is the outcome that you're measuring out of, that whole analysis?
See, the standard matrices are there. I'm not going to speak about the standard metrics. I think all of us are used to it in terms of attrition, in terms of engagement, morale, all of it. Right now, what we are attempting to use is we are monitoring the entire attendance through our biometric. We are trying to pick up trends in terms of, where probably it's helping a lot more. Obviously, Excel sheets and filters are available, right? But where the LLM is able to help is we are able to identify pockets. We are able to identify time zones. We are able to relate that to probably the stress at work. Okay, so we are now getting a lot of good inputs. Now, how are we able to apply this? Still in my initial stages, but I'm very excited with at least the kind of findings that's coming out. All these findings will eventually lead to a result shortly, but it looks very, some of these things which we could not have caught in our Excel filters, okay, are aspects which are very naturally coming out in some of these analysis.
So Stanley, you also mentioned that you're doing bite-sized learning, right? And adoption is very high, and kudos to you guys that you're managing that kind of adoption. What is the outcome that you're trying to achieve by doing this bite-sized learning, and how are you measuring those outcomes?
So we have a very, very simple metric, right? So each bite-sized learning module will be about max of about 10 to 15 minutes, right? And we also see, and most of it are videos or, immersive learning kind of modules, and we see the completion part. And obviously, if you need to fast track it, some people have to kind of move the needle there, to complete the 10 minutes in 2 minutes. So we have a provision where once somebody kind of tampers with it, it stops and again it restarts. Right. So that is one metric that we use, how many people actually kind of want to speed up the whole process, right? So there, you get some negative marks on that. In terms of other outcomes, we have also put some targets for certain specific groups as to they need to complete so many modules in a limited time. So that is also measured.
And to add to what you're saying, a lot of business demands come in to L&D folks or HR saying, I want these kind of skill sets.
Correct.
Right? At the same time, when we talk to our own employees, we know that their upskilling requirements are very different. How do you ensure you align the organization goals and the employees' goals in terms of learning and upskilling, using technology and otherwise as well?
So what we've done is, being an AI-based organization, so we have kind of developed in the back end a kind of a product. It's still in the process of development. So what we're trying to do is, there is an organization goal, there is an individual goal, plus there is a project demand, right, and the individual learning needs, right? So there are about 4 or 5 aspects that we look into. And this AI algorithms, what it does is it tries to map everything, all the 4 or 5 of items, and tries to come back with a idealistic kind of a training program. So certain programs are mandatory, certain are good to have. So we have kind of bifurcated that into these 2 categories. Mandatory is people have to complete it at any given cost. Good to have is, yes, it will look good on the, on a long-term career perspective.
I think that's quite interesting what you said, that you are actually using AI to match different, sets of goals, and eventually come to something which is more common and aligned and kind of benefits everyone,
yes,
the individual as well as the employee in the long run.
Correct.
Sabita, if I come to you, when you're doing a lot of skilling and upskilling, right, and you're using technology, what part of your tech-driven learning is for technology upskilling and what part of it is for soft skills or essential skills as we call them?
Yeah, thank you, Neeti. I would say, about 75% of our training needs are more technology aligned. The reason for that is, we have a hybrid model. We have a services as well as a product mix in the organization. So it's very important that, whenever the client's need changes, we have nimble-footed and agile learners in the organization. For example, I can just readily think of a skill called KTOR, which came up, and the client wanted a KTOR experienced candidate with 2-year prior experience in KTOR. Now, KTOR itself is new. So, we had to, this was an Indian in-house, very large securities organization, banking and investment securities. So, the client came up and said, now what do we do? So, HR had to swing into action. You don't readily get somebody because even if someone comes to you, it's at about 100x. And that's not feasible, right? So, does not align with my optimizing my efficiencies. What we did in this case was we had in-house coaches, and this cross-skilling was actually in tune with our own spokes at the client site, come back month on month and feedback to us data points on where they see their client needs expanding or moving. Basis that, and that's all collected in our knowledge management portal. And that's again, where AI has come to our rescue. So AI gathers all of this information and forecasts on a quarterly basis what sort of training programs we need to do as an organization. So this is something that my training manager takes care of. We go back and work closely with business in anticipation of where our projections are and where our revenue models or what they look like for the next 6 months, next 1 year. Basis this, we had already got 2 people in-house who were trained in Kitor. So, the business was very happy because delivery did not need to pay X, 100X or 50X to get someone on board, but we incentivized the person who was already there, who had learned this on his own free will. So facilitating that is something we do very well as an organization. And again, predicting. So predictive analytics is something that we have started using over the last 8 to 9 months, still learning the ropes, but it is working for us. And how is it working? Because we ensure all ends are tied. Our people who are at client locations bring in inputs, feed it in. So data is constantly being fed in. And HR tends to benefit from this sort of data analysis, which comes through again through the AI models.
Thanks, Savita. Arvind, you keep talking data and I will come back to you. How are you using data to define different learning styles? I could learn in a different fashion, you could learn in a different fashion. And your organization, which is 3,000, headcount plus, each one has a different style. I'm sure people are with varied experiences. There'll be freshers, there'll be people with lots of experience as well. And each one's learning style is very different. How do you use technology and now AI to determine different learning styles, and how do you ensure that whatever we deliver is actually impactful for the learner and the business?
Data and learning, yeah. Very interesting. I'll probably ask my friends a question. You're all probably LLM, let's assume. I'm going to ask you a question. The question is, I got a question I want to answer. Please teach me how to answer. The question is, where are you? You don't have to answer. But what are you going to tell me? I'm going to add a data. Where are you? This was asked by my spouse. You're going to give me a response, right? You're going to teach me a response. I'm going to add one more data. Where are you? This is asked by my spouse because she knows I've gone out with my team for a party. Last question. Where are you? Asked by my spouse. I'm at a party and it's 11:30 at night. So each time I add data, right? Now if you're going to keep thinking of the kind of response that you give me, it's going to get sharper and sharper. Now, coming back to your question, right, 3,000 employees. Well, have we explored the entire opportunity of AI in our current landscape? We are probably in the process of doing it. But one thing where we are very aspirational and we want to get in is that can we curate 3,000 learning paths for our employees? But that is the end goal that I want to get at in terms of outcomes that we want to drive. In this journey, we figured out one thing. The accuracy of data is probably what is going to aid or help me create those learning paths. Today, probably at a very congregation level, at team levels, we are able to create curated learning paths, skill programs. So we are trying to integrate a lot of appraisal data into our L&D database, which has skills and competency levels. And then along with that, we're trying to integrate a lot of people master data in terms of their experience, the background that they come out with, right? It's helping at this point in time to get at probably at a larger congregation level. But I think the power of AI is really, really strong. We probably I think if we should probably stress a little more hard, get our data to be a lot more accurate. It should be easy to create 3,000 customizable training programs or a training learning journey for our employees. I think that's probably the power of data that I see.
And a question to either one of you. Is it practical from a company standpoint to actually create and manage 3,000 learning journeys?
And now I'm going to bank on the power of LLM and AI. right? So obviously now I see a lot many more. Well, I'll give you a simple example. AI-based HR ticketing that we do at this point in time, right? So I'm sure many of us are using those bots which are already there. I used to have a team of 4 of them answering HR queries and responses part of my shared services team. This is when I was 1,600 employees. Today I have a team of 3 HR members doing the same job for 3,000 employees, right? So if that's possible, aspirational, I think this should be possible.
Okay, interesting. Savita, Stanley, do you want to come in on this? Multiple learning journeys for different employee sets.
Yeah, I think that's a way going forward, multiple learning journeys, because the way the technology is evolving and the short span of time that each technology has, I think that's the only way forward. We need to have individualistic kind of training programs, have some methodology to kind of monitor those. Right now we may not have, but yes, that's something that we have to look at.
Savita, you have any views on that?
My take on this is multiple learning journeys is definitely possible, provided we plan it, accordingly. In the sense, it's got to be commercially viable as well, and the returns should be well thought through before we embark on such journeys. In my previous organization, we were about 53,000 employees across 36 countries, and I've had the good fortune of being associated right there on creating and curating those learning journeys, more so for people who were into the organization, off the project, awaiting their next assignment. How do you utilize these people? How do you get them future ready? Because rather than say, they are on the much hated word called bench, how do we actually get them cross-skilled in anticipation of future needs and not be, too very reactive in everything that comes through our way. So HR swung into action. This was a global program, and we had about 23 learning journeys created with 23 tech tracks. So the 23 technology tracks were across these 36 countries, and people could go online and choose. This entire thing was bot driven, and they were also, awarded and rewarded accordingly because they had badges. So we had an inbuilt loyalty program, and they could exchange those badges for anything that they wanted, either merchandise of the organization or, it could be coupons, things like that. So, sometimes you need to incentivize people to learn, and that's something we brought into the system. So our learning journeys were, gamification incarnated, because we used a lot of gamification in our learning journeys, and that made people get into, adapting to it much faster. Because whenever, the generation, today we're talking about an average age of about 23, 24 years in the organization. Now, these are people who come forward and do not like the traditional training methods, and they get bored with it, right? So how do you capitalize on that boredom factor, and how do you make them go through this? So we have also had representation from that segment of the workforce into creating and curating these journeys alongside HR. So specific cases that we have been very successful. Involving them works.
Yeah, actually you're right, because I think if we start writing, content, curriculum and curating learning journeys for somebody who is a 20-year-old, I don't think we'll be able to do it right. They understand their style much better, and it's just right that we leave it on to them. But Stanley, to you, right, you are an AI first company, right? How do you upskill and train your HR workforce, L&D teams, to ensure that they are able to meet the demand of the organizations?
Since we are a startup, we don't have a large HR team as such, but yes, the future plan is, I think, my boss, the founder, he always insists, right, in each and every step and every job and every work, you need to apply AI, right? It can be, just writing a job description or anything that you do, it has to be evaluated by AI, right? So when that comes in, I think, for example, a simple thing, like one of my team members, he gets a learning and development, right? So we had this challenge. We are kind of placed all over globally, and we got a lot of young students, MS students, who come and work with us as part of their programs. So the initial challenge was, how do we kind of cater to different linguistic groups, and how do we translate the trainings, modules and everything into that? AI was a huge help there in terms of translating the modules that's available. And across, even in places like Italy and many countries in Europe, we were able to kind of standardize it in the local language, translate and then standardize those programs, and it came out very cost effective.
I think content is something that it's become a commodity right now, and that's an area where very clearly we use AI. And of course, like we've been discussing for the last few minutes, that we'll use data to analyze what the learner needs to learn, how do they need to learn, and all of that. A question that I have for all of you is, where do you not or where should you not use AI? Where should you and where should you not or where do you not use AI?
So I probably have a very short answer. I mean, this is a lift off from what my manager keeps telling me. Arvind, there's a difference between natural intelligence and artificial intelligence, right? So artificial intelligence is okay, but then it supersedes with natural intelligence. So probably to answer your question, where should you not use AI? Definitely not for decision making. Use it as an input into your decision making process, but AI cannot decide for you at this point in time.
Well, he stole my thunder away. Right. All I was going to say is that, artificial intelligence can never substitute the human mind and the human intelligence. So anything which involves key decision making, anything which involves a lot of, feeding in critical inputs to the business for business outcomes, I would not rely on AI.
Sure.
Right? So AI can probably substitute and take care of repetitive tasks. It can bring in and help us understand analytics very well. Because AI has a natural ability to correlate different sort of inputs and different data points and bring in some sort of semblance to what we would like to do.
Okay.
That is fine. But if you ask me, would I look up those inputs and make my decisions? I think I'll still rely on teams and leaders and the managers and employees down the line. Where should I absolutely not use it? I would not want to use AI in places where the human emotion supersedes the artificial, what do I call it? Intelligence is just a word, but artificial crudeness, right? Because the human mind and the people we work with require the human touch. And all said and done, technology can go rapidly, changing each day. It's so volatile, but people work with people work for people.
Yeah.
They don't work for data.
Yeah.
So therein, I think, lies the delicate balance which any HR team will have to exercise.
Sure.
As in, how much of decision making. For example, very recently, I had an employee whose, I would say, record came up to me for termination. And I don't want to go into details, but long story short, the person apparently did not fit the bill according to the AI inputs. So AI came up and, we have this bot, and one of the managers takes his input, comes up to me and says, Savita, you know what, I need to have this person also terminated. So I got into the whole thing and I said, but why, Can you explain to me 3 reasons where this person failed? If it's to do with learning and, ability to learn, the speed of learning, agility, that's something which is manageable. We can give the person an opportunity again. If it is something to do with not in accordance with the value systems or ethos of the organization, no questions asked, the person can be terminated. Did your AI generate any inputs on that? The answer was no. So you see, AI can't by itself be allowed to rule the roost.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if I'm disappointing people here, because to me, I think human intelligence, humaneness, compassion will still rule and continue to, overshadow any artificial intelligence around us. They work in tandem, no doubt. But in itself, I would not use artificial intelligence in such situations.
Yeah, so you're basically saying our jobs are safe. We don't know about the next generation.
Yeah, as long as we're able to manage and control AI, our jobs are safe. And learn AI.
Yeah, but I think you made a very valid point that you use AI as an enabler,
Yeah.
as a productivity tool, and not just use it for everything.
Decision making.
Decision making, yeah. That's quite valid, Stanley.
Yeah, I think I completely agree with what Sabita said. Where human touch and emotion is involved, I will not use AI. Right? I'll give you a small example, which happened in my earlier company. So we used to use AI bots to kind of touch base with employees on their 30, 60, and 90-day milestones, right? Get their feedback, and then the HR team will, if there's something alarming that's coming up, the HR team will get in touch with them. So there was this guy who was just typing out his 60-day kind of feedback, and then, the very next day or that day, same evening, we got a red alarm saying that this guy is going to attempt suicide, so something drastic is going to happen, so please kind of get in touch with him immediately. So we never got the full feedback from AI. But apparently what has happened is when he was typing out his responses, instead of skill, he has missed out the yes and it became kill. Right, so the whole organization was shaken up as to why, what has happened, right? But at the end of the day, when we analyzed it, when we spoke to the employee, nothing of that sort happened, right? So, too much of dependence on AI, especially when it comes to a human touch, I think that's where I will keep AI away. Yeah.
I would like to add something. Thank you, Stanley. You brought out something which is something I've experienced. Right, post-COVID, many organizations try and roll out initiatives for the sake of rolling out an initiative, something new. Okay, so I want to share quickly in 2 minutes an experience which was about Moodometer. How many of you here have either worked with Moodometers or heard about Moodometers? I understand today emotional analytics is a big thing, right? AI is supporting with emotional analytics. So what is emotional analytics? Right from the point you walk, it's actually eerie, folks. By the time you walk into the office, what's your mood, what's your expression looking like? All the camera captures all of that around you. Nothing is private anymore, right? And what do you do mid-noon when you go out for lunch and you come back? Is your face the same? And the evening when you're leaving office, is your emotion the same? Sometimes it sounds ridiculous. Right? Now, all of this data which is being gathered, what happens to this data? It's being fed back to the line manager and the divisional head. So here we had a similar case where this person, we had a scale point of 1 to 5, 5-point scale, and they're supposed to say, I'm sad, or I'm very sad, I'm good, I'm happy, and I'm thrilled or delighted, something like that. Now, post-COVID, tell me who is going to choose delighted? Nobody would, right? People are going through the most uncertain part of their lives. So here we had a couple of people who had always marked themselves on the low. And AI, came in today. We're talking so much about AI, but it's always been there in different avatars and forms. So the input which came to us were, here are 5 people, and these are system-generated emails which said, here are 5 people you may want to replace because they will not probably continue with your organization anymore. Now, we swung into action. We got the HR business partners to speak to them. This was pan locations. We got them talking to the employees to understand why and what actually we could do to uplift their spirit and their mood. Now, if I had to rely on only AI and go ahead, wrong decisions would be made. People would lose valuable employees. And I think that's ridiculous. It probably works in retail outlets. When you go to buy your television, you walk into Chroma, for example. I can think of Chroma because it's there in Chennai. And you walk in there and then you see, okay, you look at a TV and the wife looks at the husband and says, this, right? Not okay. Now that's captured. Now that's an emotion which says, okay. She was not okay with, say, Sony or, something else. Now, the other emotion which is captured is you look at something and then the eyes go bright. And this is also an emotion. So emotion analytics is a huge thing which AI is actually playing with today. Yeah. And I'm saying playing with because it's really damaging, because I would not want every emotion of mine to be fed into a computer with data and binaries and whatnot, because that's fine for a retail kind of outlet because they have to make decisions on what products will sell, how do I look up future demands, what area should I invest my money on, that's okay there. But in our kind of service organizations, I think we need to draw a line somewhere and we just can't go with inputs which come in. It will help if your partners, your HR partners go out, reach out to people, again, compassion, understand the issue and try and address it. That's my submission. Thank you.
I think very valid, Savita, and to that, Arvind, question to you is, it's so much of technology and transformation happening. How would you actually, what advice would you give to everyone to just maintain data security and individual privacy as well?
I think probably I'll speak about what I am doing, but like what you rightly said, it's become now a topic across the world. Yeah. India is also now brought its data security policy, right, in line with what the UK is doing, the US is doing. AI, again, we have to be extremely cautious. There are enough technologies available in the market, but as HR, we need to ensure that we probably select the right process, the right product. It becomes very, very important. Almost every day you will see in LinkedIn, if you have a title of a CHRO or a HR head or something like that, you'll have hundreds of corporates knocking your door, right? I'm sure with your title, you'll have 2x, 3x than probably what I get. If you kind of look at, I'll probably add to what Sabita and Stanley were also speaking, this is very dangerous in terms of how every aspect, every moment is getting recorded. We, at least as a corporate, I mean, some probably in our private use that we use our LinkedIn, Facebook, we don't have too much of a control. But at least from a corporate standpoint, as HR, we have to kind of apply everything that's required. Take help from your cybersecurity team, take help from your legal team before you bring in any product. Okay, specifically which probably uses a lot of AI and LLM, because there is a lot of scope of personal data getting leaked out. There are two parts of leakage. One is personal leakage of what an individual's personal data going out. The second leakage is because AI and LLM work on big data. They work on TBs of data, right? If we don't have the right secure system, the right secure environment, there's a much larger risk that probably I'm sure you can relate it directly to yourself if the corporate data kind of moves out. And this is now becoming one of the hottest spot in which data leakage happens.
Absolutely, and thank you so much. I know the bell just rang, but my last question to you, Stanley, is that, when we hire, job seekers or candidates into our organizations, every time business tells us that we don't have relevant skill sets, we don't have enough candidates with the skills that we're looking at. On the other hand, we've got lots of students who are passing out of our education institutes and they're just not employable or job ready, as we call them. How do we how do we actually shorten that gap of the employees getting productive the moment they join the organization? Any word of advice from an L&D or an HR perspective before we wind up the session?
I think the syllabus in most of the universities are outdated, if you ask me frankly, right? They're not up to date. So the only way to have that in place is, the companies should do a very close collaboration of having on-campus programs, at least some kind of internship program in the campus for at least 6 months in the final semester, so that, and they train them for their own requirements and what is there as the latest trend in the industry, so that when they come on board, they are kind of job ready. May not be 100%, but yes, at least 60%.
Yeah, I think absolutely relevant. Education institutes by themselves can't keep upgrading their curriculum with the change that's happening on a daily basis. As industry partners, we should be able to enable that, for students. Internships and apprenticeships, like you mentioned, I think are very, very important. That collaboration, given the fact that when they come into our organizations, learning and development teams have to anyway spend time and upskill them and make them job ready. Why don't we start before they come into the organizations? So yeah, thank you so much, panel. I think.
Can I take the liberty of asking you one question?
Yes.
On behalf, I'm sure all of us have this
As if
question.
you're standing there asking me to.
Probably one short question, right? You're one of the largest employers in India.
Yes.
What are your two mandates to your HR function in terms of technology and AI?
So I think one is for us, the whole demand-supply match is very critical. The better I do it, the faster I do it, it's beneficial for me at a business level. So our technology investments are largely going on that one side. Of course, AI, LLMs, all of that is part of the whole tech stack. And the other piece is keeping our own teams relevant, updated to what's happening in the world outside. Because if I'm hiring somebody who is an AI or an ML engineer, my recruitment team has to at least be able to speak that language that the engineer is talking. Otherwise, I'll not be able to screen the candidate and do a good job about it. So I think just two things. Yeah. Thank you. So thank you everyone, and thank you Stanley, Savita and Arvind.